you left Young Talent Time at 16 years of age, all of a sudden this massive amount of space and structure in your life just disappeared overnight. How did you deal with it?
Tough. It was because of the structure too breaking down, and all of a sudden I had all this free time on my hands, you know, because I was working 6 days a week in that time. Mondays and Tuesdays were recording nights. Wednesday there was always publicity or something to do. Thursday, Friday we were learning dance routines and placement and staging. And Saturday from 9 till 9 o'clock at night we were on the set, and we'd go live to air at 6:30 every Saturday night. So you go from an incredibly rigidly structured life to nothing. I was devastated.
What was your vision for your life?
I had dreams. I had dreams of wanting to continue and to be able to travel and work internationally, but I also knew that the journey was going to be really hard. I had no illusions.
4 or 5 years later that you released your first single called, and I think we all remember it, I Need Your Body. You know, it was you coming out, it was you changing your, you know, the tiny Tina. I'm not a child artist anymore. I'm sexy. I'm an adult.
I'm growing.
I just wondered what your Sicilian father thought when he first saw that video.
No, I'm sure he was a little mortified, both of them. But I think, you know, bless them, they let me discover what it is that I had to discover.
What I noticed is between that video and 4 years later, when Don't Ask came out, it was a relaxed, it was not an overly sexualised Tina Arena. It was singing songs that we still relate to and just heard now. What happened in those 4 years that brought you to that place of Don't Ask?
I met a gentleman who I had the privilege of working with for a very long time. His name is Pierre Baroni, and Pierre Baroni for me is probably one of the greatest visual artists this country's ever produced. Pierre was able to kind of look at me and strip me back and go, no, you're not about that. This is what you're about. I see you simplistic, I see you honest, and I see you timeless.
He understood who you were more than you understood
I had no idea who I was. I was a young girl who was in the middle of an incredible journey.
Don't Ask sold over 2 million copies just in this country alone. Tina won 7 arias off the back of this album. And I think when we hear this music, we all go back to exactly where we were in our lives at that time.
Interesting.
Chains, Heaven Help My Heart, Sorrento Moon, Wasn't It Good? All off this one album. This was pure, unadulterated, mainstream success. Did it feel as good as you thought it would?
It was so surreal, Ange. It was so surreal. I was really very lucky, and it was very groundbreaking at the time. I guess some sort of a pioneer, if you want to call, but I was really proud of that.
Did it make you as happy as you thought it would?
I was working too much. Who had the time to really think or digest anything?
In Deep was next, and it was very successful as well. And Burn was on In Deep. And actually, I think my favourite Tina Arena song, which is Now I Can Dance. I just love it.
What does it make you feel?
It makes me feel like I've arrived at a place where I'm centred and whole and I'm safe.
Analytically, beautifully analysed.
However, you were in the marriage from hell when that song came out, weren't you?
Yeah.
Is it really strange when what you're singing bears no resemblance to what you're living in your life?
The beauty of art. It doesn't always necessarily imitate life, thank goodness. I really honestly think that chapter, which was really difficult, was a very necessary chapter to live. It made me grow up and look at human beings very differently because I was incredibly naive. That was my lesson in life.
Can you can't hum a few songs, because if you don't, I will. If you don't.
Now I can dance, clouds have all disappeared. It's a postcard to my best mate telling her, I'm okay, feel free, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
The first words are, so I hope this finds you well. Sun is shining down Eastern Valley Way, which is a street in Sydney. When I first moved to Sydney, I was driving down the thing thinking, this is from the Tina Arena song.
Well, Eastern Valleyway is Northern Beaches, and I remember the very first time I went there, probably about 15, 18 years ago. It was such a beautiful part of the world that I discovered, and I just remember being mesmerised by the Northern Beaches and this beautiful place called Eastern Valleyway, and I thought, how incredibly beautifully poetic is that? The poetry that goes with words and places, I think I started to look at life in a bit of a different way, thank goodness. I started to see the poetry in life.
You married your manager. He obviously helped you in some way, so it was a very difficult relationship because he was with you for the biggest successes, but it was not a happy marriage. It ended, and it ended as the kind of cycle of In Deep was ending, and you were moving somewhere else.
I had to.
And Australia wasn't part of the agenda.
No, it wasn't. I left my safety zone. I put a backpack on my back, I grabbed my cases, I left the beautiful home, the car, I left everything. My life began the minute I walked out that door and left that sense of materialism behind.
One of the best things about living in Australia, of course, is the fantastic wine we have here.
10 Minutes by Tractor is, I reckon, one of the great brand names of Australia, and the idea behind it is that all the vineyards are within 10 minutes by tractor. I think we're making some of the great Pinot Noirs in the world. We weren't 20 years ago, but there's a whole school of winemakers who are young and passionate and in love with what they're doing. And over a 15-year period, I think the quality of the wines have just become fantastic.
At the Cellar is filmed at Dan Murphy's Cellar, 282 Chapel Street, Melbourne.